Good morning and welcome. Would like to start off by thanking Council President Dr. Jennifer Campbell, Council President Pro-Tem Stephen Whithurn, our City Attorney Mara Elliott, our Police Chief David Nisleit, University Christian Church Reverend Caleb Lines, Rich's nightclub owner Ryan Bedrassen, Pride Co-Chair David Thompson, and Pride's Executive Director Fernando Lopez for joining me and so many other San Diegans this morning. This morning we are here in front of the University Christian Church under a banner proudly proclaiming that Black Lives Matter, and in front of rainbow doors that were ripped off and thrown to the ground just last night. A week ago, this welcoming and affirming place here in our city was vandalized. 2 Black Lives Matter banners were splashed with paint in front of this church and at Rich's nightclub. These are 2 places that so many of our LGBT community find opening and welcoming, find a sense of belonging, and they were violated by this act of vandalism. And while some might say that this is a small act of vandalism, we must call this for what it is, which is an act of hate. As mayor of this great city, I want to be extremely clear. There is no room for hate in San Diego. This was more than an act of vandalism. It was an attack on our community and on the people who live in our city. And we will not overlook or marginalize these kinds of actions. We'll address them head on. And so I'm here to stand in unity with some of our community's leaders, our police chief and other city officials, to denounce bigotry and racism in our city. For too long, threats and criminal acts against our Black and LGBTQ communities have been increasing. And we can show that those who live with hate in their hearts, that this community will not let them win. We can all play a role in stopping hate. I want to ask San Diegans, if you see hate crimes in your community, please do not brush them off as something small. As we have seen in recent months and years, they are far from that. They have the potential of inciting greater violence and the potential for greater harm to individuals and to property. So I ask San Diegans to report what you see to our police department by calling our non-emergency line, to file a police report so that we can document these acts in our community, and to use the city's Get It Done app to document acts of vandalism here in San Diego. And of course, in an emergency, we ask that you call 911. Our police department is here to protect and serve all of us. And I think that's important to reiterate to communities that sometimes feel marginalized, to recognize and know that we have a police department that understands and will be responsive to your concerns. I'm working closely with Chief David Nisleit to create and maintain trusting relationships with members of our communities. And so I encourage you to report what you see in order to allow us to hold those folks responsible. And let me be very clear. It may take us a little longer than we want, but we'll get you, and we will hold you responsible for what you do, because this does not stand in San Diego. With that, I want to just acknowledge that we can create a San Diego that is more equitable and that protects all of us. That is our goal. A partner in that goal this morning is the council member who represents this district that we're in. I'd like to introduce City Council President Pro-Tem Stephen Whithurn to make some comments. He'll be followed up by a series of other speakers from the city, and of course, we'll be available for questions afterwards. Council President Pro-Tem Whithurn.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning. I stand united with our mayor and the other leaders here in condemning these acts of hate. As the mayor said, there is no tolerance for this. And as the council member for this area, I want to make it clear that hate in any form is not welcome here in District 3 or anywhere in this city. These acts were committed, of all places, in Hillcrest. This is an area that for decades has been a refuge for those who have felt unwelcome in other parts of our city, but who found a community here. That sense of safety was violated, and we will not stand for it. Let us also acknowledge that for too long, the Black community, which is an integral part of the LGBTQ community, has been left out of the conversation. That has contributed to instances of racism from within the LGBTQ community, and there is no place for that either. We need to be united, now more than ever. We need to recognize that when one community is attacked, it is an attack on all of us. We must ensure that our neighborhoods are safe for all of us. As the mayor said, we will bring to justice those who committed these acts of hate. And we will continue to work every day to affirm that Black Lives Matter in Hillcrest, in District 3, and throughout our great city of San Diego. Thank you. And now I am pleased to introduce our City Attorney, Mara Elliott.
Good morning. Thank you, Council President Pro-Tem Whithurn. We are here today to assure our communities that hate crimes will not be tolerated here in Hillcrest or anywhere in San Diego. No one should have to live in fear of violence because of who they are. We are dedicated to ensuring that anyone who commits a hate crime in San Diego is held accountable. But we need everyone's help to make that happen. As terrible as these acts of vandalism were, let's remember that hate crimes of this scale are the exception. It's far more common to victimize individuals through harassment, threats, cyberbullying, and physical assaults. Too often, victims do not report these crimes because they do not trust the criminal justice system. So no investigation is made, no charges are filed, and there are no consequences. We must work together to encourage victims to come forward so that a proper investigation occurs and justice is achieved. This is especially important because smaller incidents that go unaddressed often escalate into more serious attacks. Perpetrators who go unpunished are emboldened to act again. I plan to work with the people here and with representatives of the LGBTQ community to identify and correct whatever institutional barriers stand in our way. Let's recommit to making San Diego a model for community collaboration in the reporting, prosecution, and elimination of hate crime. Thank you for being here today. It's my pleasure to introduce our Police Chief, David Nisleit.
Thank you, City Attorney Mara Elliott. And folks, I want to make it very clear, as the Chief of the San Diego Police Department, I stand here in unity with everybody to denounce hate. This is nothing that this city, this police department will tolerate. And so I want to really stress several things. Although we did see a slight decline in hate crimes in 2020 compared to 2019, I want to stress the importance of reporting incidents even if you think they are small in nature. Hate has no place in our communities, has no place in Hillcrest, has no place in anywhere in the city of San Diego or the world for that matter. So I ask you that you contact any police officer, you come to any of our stations. We also have liaisons to the LGBT community that are available 7/24. So I would like you to call us when anything comes out. Also, I want to talk about the investigation, and at the end of this press conference, we are going to be sharing a photo that I want to stress as a person of interest for us. This was a photo that was taken on January 24th, just before 5 o'clock in the morning at 1000 University. So if I'm actually pleading with the community to help us. We need to stop hate. Hate has no place in this city, and the San Diego Police Department stands united with you. And with that, I would like to introduce Reverend Caleb Lines.
Thank you, Police Chief Nisleit, and thanks for the outpouring of love and support this morning and throughout the last couple of weeks. I'm so glad that we can be standing here in front of a fresh Black Lives Matter banner and rehung rainbow doors, even though last night, as we have mentioned, the rainbow doors were once again ripped from the front pillars of the church. While the vandalism that we and others have experienced is disheartening, what is truly heartbreaking is that this vandalism is emblematic of a deep divide in our country, where some people do not believe that Black Lives Matter or that LGBTQ plus lives have value. As a church, we believe it is our faithful, sacred duty to proudly proclaim that Black Lives Matter and that people should be granted the same rights and privileges regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. And certainly we believe that all people are beautifully and wonderfully made in God's divine image, and that God created you to be exactly who you are supposed to be. University Christian Church always stands on the side of love. We stand on the side of love regardless of race or ethnicity, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. We stand on the side of love regardless of immigration status, regardless of physical or mental ability, regardless of culture or creed. We love and forgive even people who vandalize churches and businesses. As the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And so we strive to love. And we have been so moved by the outpouring of love and support by the community as made evident today. And we are trying to respond to this incident in love in two different ways. First, we're excited to announce that on Valentine's Day at 6 o'clock p.m., we will stream a performance called Colors of Love. And second, we realize the role that white Christianity in America has played in fostering white nationalist sentiment, right down to an inaccurate portrayal of Jesus as white when we know that Jesus was a poor Middle Eastern brown-skinned Jewish peasant. And so we're asking artists, particularly artists of color and LGBTQ+ identifying artists, to create a work of art in any medium of how they see a non-white Jesus. There will be a socially distanced pop-up gallery in front of the church at the end of Black History Month on February 28th, and also a digital exhibit. And as an incentive, we're awarding $1,000 for first place, $500 for second place, and $250 for third place, based on a recommendation from a diverse judging panel. Information on how to participate in that is on our church social media pages and on our website. I'd like to thank member M.G. Perez and Pastor Marcella Salgado for taking the lead on this artistic response. It is our deepest hope that something beautiful can be created from the hate that has occurred here in Hillcrest, because we know that as long as we hope and as long as we love, beauty is possible. Thanks be to God. Speaking next is San Diego Pride Chair David Thompson.
Good morning, and thank you to all of you who've gathered here today. The irony that the Hillcrest and San Diego community come together to denounce white supremacist acts during Black History Month in 2021, 45 years after gaining national recognition, and 51 years after trans Black activist Marsha P. Johnson became a face for gay liberation, is not lost on any of us. 16 constitutional amendments and civil rights acts of Congress, marriage equality, and the Equality Act, each alone cannot eradicate the anti-Black bias and hatred that courses through this community and nation. As an educator, a Christian, a cisgender gay Black man, as the co-chair of San Diego Pride's Board of Directors, I stand as a face of intersection targeted with the acts of vandalism that we have seen in our community. In the midst of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, I know that young people are faced with academic, social, and emotional challenges that we have yet to begin understanding. However, they are processing. They are learning and seeing the world and their place in it through the responses and actions, the decisions and the voices of the people around them, those who live in their home and those they see in the media. Their education right now is shaped by our behavior. This right here today, in response to these acts, is one example of how kids today learn. These acts are unacceptable. They're not surprising, however. We have been here before. Gay bars and churches have a lot in common. Each has served as a place of refuge, a sanctuary, for people seeking an understanding of their purpose and value in the world. Each, for many, is a home, a place to be seen, embraced, and loved by others who do not judge them for who they are, where they come from, what they believe, or how they feel. I appreciate the University Christian Church, Rich's Nightclub, the Mayor's Office and City Council, the Police Chief, San Diego Pride, and others for standing here together to say, not today. Signs that read Black Lives Matter to those who fought for justice and belonging finally say, yes, you matter here. Signs are one step towards many, in actions that our community must take to look around, to see everyone in our community, folks whose histories have been shielded, destroyed, whose families and communities have cast them aside for failing to fit into a box, to the children who fail to see themselves represented in the materials they learn in school. We finally say, we see you and we hear you. At some point, paint isn't going to erase my past. It's not going to erase the history or the legacies of my ancestors, and it's not going to eradicate their fight. Black lives, all Black lives, queer, trans, straight, cisgender, gay, rich, poor, all Black lives matter. And that's the lesson that I hope we continue to model here in San Diego, because the bigots who vandalize these spaces represent past generations and not the generation that I believe we are setting up for our children. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce Pride's Executive Director, Fernando Lopez.
Thank you, David, and thank you to our Mayor, Todd Gloria, for bringing us all together today. Our city, region, and nation have seen a rise in violent white supremacist activity. It is incumbent upon all of us as community leaders to address these issues head on. The attack on an LGBTQ open and affirming congregation and an LGBTQ-owned business, both showing visible support for Black Lives Matter movement and the LGBT community, was a direct message, and that message must be answered directly, as we are doing here today. But we know that these incidents are not new, nor are they isolated. They are part of the persistent and pervasive continuum of white supremacist activity that has plagued our region and our country for far too long. For months, outsiders have been coming into Hillcrest to incite fear in the LGBT community. They've been throwing eggs, brandishing weapons, tagging buildings and cars, harassing patrons, and targeting business owners. Our community is no stranger to this violence. We need look no further back than 2006 to when baseballs attacked us at Pride parades, or 1999 when tear gas attacked us at Pride events, or that our community, we know that our community has been a target. We need look no further than the white supremacist protests and rallies that shook our community in Pacific Beach just last month, or the Capitol just last month, or the gay man who was stabbed in Oceanside in November, or the shooting in Chabad Synagogue in 2019, or the white supremacist rally in Chicano Park in 2018, or the xenophobic militias that have been plaguing our border region for far too long, or the racist, sexist, and homophobic attacks that our local LGBTQ elected officials have had to endure, from Steve Padilla in Chula Vista, or Corey Schumacher in Carlsbad, or our own mayor here in San Diego. The point is that as we combat homophobia and transphobia, we must also address racism. And as we combat racism, we must also address homophobia and transphobia. It is not us at the intersection of these lived experiences who are broken. It is our society and systems that need to be reimagined in service to all of us. These issues can't be addressed unless we are vocal. We have to speak up. We have to be loud. We have to report these issues as we are made aware, or we risk giving those who seek to harm us passive permission through our inaction. The systems we have in place to keep us safe may not be perfect, but we have a steadfast mayor who is willing to address this hate, listen to our concerns, and find real solutions. We have a police department who is ready to listen to our concerns, and LGBT community liaisons who are willing to step forward and assist you directly if those systems are not working. We have to do so much better to combat homophobia, transphobia, and racism. Work that will not be done in one day, but I believe our community is resilient, and we can work to stop these acts of hate in their tracks and build a pathway for healing and safer communities together. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. We'll get that eventually. I want to just wrap up by thanking everyone for being here. I want to thank all the speakers. Maybe two quick observations. Number one, maybe a testimony on my part, because I recognize members of the community want to know, are our city officials focused on this and acting upon it? And when the news spread of this incident here and at Rich's nightclub, the first call I think I got was from our police chief. The second one was from our city attorney. And as the component units of our law enforcement operation at the city of San Diego, these two leaders were not hesitant to say that they will put every resource they have to find the individuals here. So to Mara and to Chief Nisleit, thank you for that. I also want to point out we have a lot of speakers here today. We could have had a whole lot more, but in the interest of social distancing and mindful that the pandemic is still very much a thing, many of our other city leaders are at home, but they're rooting for us from afar. So whether it was every member of the city council, as represented by our council president, obviously we're in Steve Whithurn's district, I want people to know this city stands united in this regard, and just to be very, very clear about it. The second thing I want to just mention is that the pride that I had in our community after the events of last year, starting with the murder of George Floyd to countless other attacks on black people in this country, when this community, the home of our San Diego LGBTQ community, started hanging these Black Lives Matter banners, that was a moment that made me so proud. It made me proud to be a person of color, made me proud to be an LGBTQ person, recognizing that our progress as a community has never happened singularly. It's always happened because we worked together. And so when I saw these banners, and I saw it at Rich's, and that made me so proud to see that banner, and then to see it modified to say they still matter. It's that we're not letting go of this, that we're going to do the hard and long-term work in this city to make sure that those are not just words on a banner, but they're real. And that's why we had to be here today, right? Because someone in this community thought it was okay to vandalize these signs. And so we're not going to take this moment of extreme pride, of interconnectedness, of cooperation, of the kinds of stuff that we know, whether it's city leadership taking it seriously or community members saying, I stand with the black community. We're not going to let that be torn apart by a person or other persons who decide that that their way is better. Hate will not stand in this city. And as you heard from our police chief, we have a person of interest that we would like the public to know about and to let us know who that person is. So to the members of the media here today, thank you for being present. Please communicate that image to your viewers and to your readers. Make sure that they know this is someone we want to know more about. And lastly, as I say, we will take this seriously, and it may take us longer than we care for, but we will find individuals who are responsible for acts of violence and hate in this community, and we'll hold them accountable. Thank you very much for being here today. We'll be available for one-on-ones for anyone who'd like to follow up questions. Thank you guys very much.